Right, everyone, shall we start? Can I welcome everybody to the meeting, and can I ask for any apologies, Dominic?
No apologies, thank you, Chair.
Okay. Are we all here then? Great. So, late items from the Chair, there are none. Declaration of interest. Are there any declaration of interest from anybody? No? Minutes of the last meeting held on the 22nd of November. Can we approve those? Yeah, thank you. The first agenda item is a waste services update. Sam?
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to talk through the report from the Head of Waste Services, who's here to answer any technical questions. So this report follows a couple of previous community scrutinies reports around funding of the public protection officers and the impact on fly tipping and street cleansing, and also the impact on fly tipping. So what we're trying to do in this report is bring everything together, just to help the committee understand, that impact. So just in terms of the context, councils have faced significant pressure throughout COVID-19 and have demonstrated flexibility and creativity in terms of how they deliver the service. In addition to that, there have been national shortages around HGV drivers, and all of those things together have presented some challenges for us in Derby. I think that said, we have been able to deliver. Through COVID, there were some changes to the operating model around the Household Waste Recycling Centre at Rainsway. And that operating model has been embedded as a new way of working post that implementation. Waste services are delivered by the waste team. Fly tipping is collected by the street pride cleansing team. So this report touches on both. The purpose of the service, of both services, is to enable residents to dispose of their waste responsibly. And the Community Scrutiny Review Panel have asked for information on fly tipping and waste to better understand the correlation and the impacts in the city. So this report therefore seeks to update on that. So just in terms of the national picture around waste, there was in 2018 a resources and waste strategy for England released, which contained a number of areas for consultation. The two main areas for waste services to consider and prepare for are separate food waste collections and consistency of collections. Guidance has not yet been issued. So in Derby, we currently commingle our food waste with our garden waste, and we have a commingled recycling collection, so glasses in with the recycling scheme. Based on the changes, there will be a need for us to potentially look at our operating model in Derby if we're directed to do so by national government. Just looking at the food waste element, nationally it's reported that households produce on average about 0.5 tonne of food waste per year, and the graph in the report, Fig 1, just shows where Derby sits in that, so just around average, which is good, that's decent. Sorry, this microphone's not ideal. So in terms of fly tipping, the national picture around fly tipping is an increase, around 18% from 2018-19 to 2020-21, according to the Environment Agency stats. And I've put a graph in there just to show where the East Midlands is, just in relation to the rest of the UK. So in the East Midlands, there's a reported 19 incidents of fly tipping per 1,000 people. The highest in the UK is London at 43 per 1,000 people. And again, just a visual representation of that. I won't go through all the detail of the report, Chair, unless you want me to pick any of it out, but there have been a number of studies from Zero Waste Scotland, RAP, Keep Britain Tidy, just around the evidence of behavioural insights and fly tipping. That's something we've not gone into detail in Derby. But it is clear that by understanding reasons, motivations and behaviours, it is possible to take meaningful action towards fly tipping, and some of those studies have demonstrated that. So in Derby, changes were made to the Household Waste Recycling Centre at the implementation of COVID measures, which was approved in December 2020 and reviewed again in November 2021. Community Scrutiny has discussed the need to review the data over a longer time period to understand the impact of the booking system, and we are maintaining that review of the data. Recommendations were made by executive scrutiny to increase accessibility to the HWRC by enabling bicycle access. This was accepted, and in December last year, a designated meet and greet area was set up to accept waste from cyclists, which was really positive. I mentioned at the start of the report that at this presentation, that reports were presented to community scrutiny around the public protection officers and street pride. That was in July and September of last year. Both reports provided some data on fly tipping, with PPOs being called to over 1,300 fly tipping incidents with an average of 19.3% of service requests leading to enforcement action, and Street Pride reporting a 26% increase in fly tipping in 2020-21. Street Pride reports did note that most cases were proactively identified by and cleared by crews and not reported by residents. So that increase was the crews going out, finding it and putting it on the system. There's a bit of information there around the council's bulky waste collection service, and through the pandemic we did increase the bulky waste by doubling the rounds to give people more flexibility in terms of accessing waste disposal systems. At Rainsway, HWRC, a booking system was modified in July 2021 to allow 12 bookings per calendar year from Derby and Derbyshire households. It was reviewed in the Council's Cabinet in November 21. Prior to this, there were a significant proportion of bookings which were not attended, which was blocking customers from accessing the HWRC. Since July, there's been a change in the available capacity with the exception of known pinch points such as Christmas and bank holidays. This is shown in Fig 3. And it's acknowledged that the data needs to be reviewed over a longer time period as per our previous community scrutiny, but it does show there is some capacity in the system and people can get appointments when they're booking them. So the report to community scrutiny in September showed that fly tipping in Derby has increased by 26% from 1920 to 2021. So far this year, the trajectory has continued with a 14% increase in the cost of disposal and a 0.1% increase in cases. So it's better than the national picture, but it's still increasing. Bringing all the available data together shows that there are some clear peaks and troughs visible. Visits to the Household Waste Recycling Centre dropped to 0, along with the waste tonnages, when the site had to be closed due to COVID restrictions in April 19. But it's fair to say they've not returned to pre-pandemic levels. In terms of curbside tonnages, there are many variables in the data, with home working thought to have increased the tonnages at the curbside. Spike in the fly tipping data in October 2020 has been analysed by the service and correlates to the implementation of the new white space system. So this is an automated system that allows the work to be put on the computer, which goes into the in-cab iPad, so the guys get the work directly. So what we found is there's more confidence in the data from that point. So not necessarily like for like beforehand, unfortunately, but going forward, we're using the new technology, which is better in terms of that reporting. We're also using the technology for street cleansing in general. So as we bring more services on stream, we'll have more data to analyse on that white space system, which is really positive. So trends in fly tipping in Derby City, they don't really differ from the national picture. There is, however, some stability this year with no significant growth in the annual fly tipping from last year. There's a growth in the cost of waste disposal, which I think is an impact of COVID, but the actual numbers were kind of steady, no real significant impact. Now, Fig 4 does bring together all the data sets that this scrutiny board asked for, but I'd like to note that they've been separated out as appendices in the end of this report, just because it's difficult to see some of the trends there, bringing all those data sets into one chart. So this chart, as you can see, it shows that there's some differences. There's the dip in visits to the HWRC and tonnages in April 2020, as discussed, and it shows a small spike in fly tipping in October 20, where we moved to the new system. So in terms of enabling residents how to dispose of their waste responsibly, lots of things are happening in Derby. We do have some waste minimisation officers who carry out educational visits in schools, although that's been difficult through COVID, with many schools not wanting additional people to go into schools. We are starting to get back into schools now and carry out workshops based on the 3 R's, which are reduce, reuse, recycle. We've also got work around composting champions and is plastic fantastic. The report also sets out a number of other initiatives that have happened to help people dispose of their waste. It also goes on to talk through some public engagement that we've done in terms of looking at what the future of waste might be. So where does that lead us then? It leads us on to looking at reviewing our waste strategy, and there was a recent event that members and officers were invited to talk about that. We do have a joint waste strategy with Derbyshire County Council, so we need to be mindful of any changes that we make to our waste strategy needs to fit in with that shared strategy that we hold with the county. But there are opportunities to improve our strategy based on the work that's coming out of the government's waste and resources strategy and some of the things that they're doing in the service around education and support. We've also had many conversations, and forgive me, Chair, I've not put this in the report, but in the developing approach around Better Together, we've had many conversations with ward members to talk about what's happening in specific localities, which can also be fed into our approach to waste strategies. So that's my presentation of the report, Chair, and I'm happy to take any questions, and Simon Aitken's here to support that as well from the service.
Hi, thanks for the report. Got few questions. So about the fly tipping, what I've seen, and many others would have observed the same thing, the fly tipping is increasing, and we can see especially on the dual carriageways, and mainly dual carriageways, and also on the roadside, there's been a trend that it's increasing. Now, I have written to highways many times, and it's not easy to clean those parts. So it's not the council thing. The dual carriageways are the highways, isn't it? But why I'm bringing this, is there any way that council can liaise with the highways? Because I personally feel that there's a campaign needed to stop that. Like you're saying, that UK is seeing an increase. It's high time, all the administration, local and national, we need to really deal with this. We can't close our eyes, and ignore it. We can't do that. We really need to do something now. So that's the first question, if we can. Yeah. Second, you mentioned about the schools, and you said it's been difficult. It's understandable. What I want to know, are we engaging with the secondary schools as well, or it's just primary schools? And as local councillors, local representatives, is it possible that we can also contribute? We can join you guys, because again, this is my personal experience, and I have brought this in the previous meetings as well. A lot of parts that goes to school, the school parts, they are heavily littered. We have tried to put posters up. We really need to educate these young kids to take pride in our area. Maybe we can make Derby an example, if we try hard. I know it's a challenge, big challenge, but if we all come together and we try really hard, we can make a difference in Derby. Thanks.
You want to respond to, I think there are 2 questions there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there was 3, Chair. So just in terms of working with National Highways, which was previously Highways England, I know they do have a roadside litter strategy, and I do have a contact there, so we can take that away as an action to pick up a wider conversation around the motorways, trunk roads, etc. Just to see if I can get their interest in fly tipping. So absolutely, there's some great work going on across the country in Hertfordshire and in other areas in Nottinghamshire where Highways England National Highways Agency are around the table. So I think that's a really good suggestion. I'm happy to take that forward. In terms of the schools, I believe we're in primary schools, but I'll be corrected if Simon wants to correct me. But I think we're working with the younger children at this stage. Again, it's something we can look at in our strategy. How do we engage with the older population? Because it's not really that cool, I think, when you get to a certain age, whereas the young children in primary schools are really engaged with talking about waste and litter. And finally, in terms of members getting involved, we'd absolutely welcome members getting involved in their wards to do something that relates to their wards in their communities to help support reducing fly tipping and littering. So we can talk to you outside of the meeting about that.
Okay, is that
Sorry, yeah, just quick one. What I propose, if we can look into run some sort of campaign in derbies, that would be great. Like, if you can run a campaign to attack the litter, take your litter home or whatever,
Yeah.
that would be a good start.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
All right, Councillor Atwell.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Sam, for the update and the report. Just a quick question. Going back to the point you made, obviously we know fly tipping's on the increase. Do we have a breakdown of where it's mostly consistent? Is it in certain wards or is it just a citywide issue?
I'm going to ask Simon to come in on that. We will have that down to geographical location because the white space system we use produces heat maps. So we are able to share ward data with members from white space and we're happy to do that. But Simon, can you advise?
Yeah, Councillor, we could actually break that down to ward level. So we could actually run reports now from white space where you'd be able to see where the fly tipping was by ward level. So we have got that information that we can get if you want us to.
Do we know where the highest level of fly tipping is at the moment?
We would know, yes.
We would know, so we
Yes.
can send that out, yeah.
Councillor Jennings.
Just following on with from the National Highways Agency, is there a way, anyway, that we could ask them for a programme of works so that we know what was coming up this year in the future year?
Yeah, okay, so.
Yeah, Councillor, we're currently working with various agencies.
Sam, you
so-
want to just put your phone microphone off?
Yeah, we're currently working with various agencies so that they tell us when they're booking road space on that area. But the A38 and the A52, we're responsible for the litter picking of that, and we're responsible for any work that needs to be done. So if you are seeing any fly tipping on there in the lay-bys, if you just report it through to us, we can get that moved. But yeah, we are when any road space is booked, we try and get in there at the same time. So other people utilise our road space, we utilise other people's just to reduce costs.
Just for my own ward, the A50, that the turn off into Chellaston is always needs looking at.
Yeah, so unfortunately that is one that we're not responsible for, but we would liaise with the Highways Agency for that particular one, but the A38 and the A52 are ours. So, but we can liaise with them for that one.
Just 1 second. Councillor Sandhu.
Thank you, Chair. My question, Samantha, is, you mentioned the team have contacted 40 schools. Have you got breakdown ward-wise, like Normanton, Abbey, Arboretum, how many schools been contacted in the wards?
We do have that, Councillor Sandhu, and we can share that with you as well.
Any more questions? Yeah. Councillor Pandey.
Another problem that we have experienced is the massive fly tipping in places owned by private owners. So is there any plan to deal with that? Thanks.
So just in terms of waste on land, we do, so we have powers to enforce against waste on land, and we usually engage and advise first and ask landlords and landowners to clear the waste. If they don't do that, we can clear it and put what's called a works in default notice on that piece of land. So if it sells, we get the money back from doing it. We do try and be collaborative with that, Councillor Pandey, so we try and encourage people to do it first. If there are any areas in your ward that are a specific issue for you, if you let us know, then we can ask some officers to find out who the owner is and make contact with them.
Okay. Yeah, great. Right, just picking up from a number of things. Fly tipping, we know, and I think it'll be confirmed that the deprived areas in particular, there's more fly tipping, less likely for use of the recycling centres. And it's an ongoing issue about online bookings. Well, certain people who are more able will be able to do that and find it very useful and a positive experience. But large numbers of people in the deprived communities and the wards don't. And I'm sure your data, the white space data, will confirm what we know on the ground, that there's more fly tipping in the deprived areas. So, are we going to get sort of detailed data? I know it's all building up slowly in white space. When do you think we could have sort of data which is sort of robust and gives us enough detail. What sort of timeline do you think that would be?
What I'd like to do, Chair, is bring a performance report to every neighbourhood board, because I think that would be really useful as a standing item on the neighbourhood boards, with that place-based mapping that can show the hotspots. So we are ready to bring the data that we have around fly tipping with a recognition that from October it's a lot more accurate than it would have been from October 2020. A lot more accurate than it would have been beforehand. So we can bring a report every quarter to the neighbourhood boards to share that information with members, and we can do that from now. I can send an officer to each of those boards to present that report for you.
Right, I think that if you can do that, I'd suggest we put a recommendation that should happen to local neighbourhood boards so that they get their local data. And I think as an oversight, it'd be helpful for this board, Scrutiny Board, to get the overall picture across the whole wards so that we can look at that on behalf of our fellow councillors. Would that be something that the board members support? Yeah? Okay? You okay with that, Dominic? Now, the other thing I wanted to say was that it's helpful, the appendix, which gives figure 4 separated out. I know Councillor Prosser mentioned that it was a bit busy, that particular slide, and it's really helpful in terms of what you put out at the end, breakdown of figure 4. From that, for me, it is clear that the total visits to the recycling centre have, at a conservative guess, reduced by a third, from 3,000 on average to about 1,000 visits. And that also is reflected in the tonnage accepted, which is, again, you're talking about 2,000 tonnes or thereabouts, coming down to sort of half a tonne on average, or just above half a tonne. So there's a corresponding reduction, which is linked to the number of visits dropping, to the number of tonnage being collected. You've said that the curbside, the all 3 bins collection has increased slightly, but not to the extent in the drop of this. My question is, where's all the waste going that was being collected before? And there's a clue, I think you've mentioned, in terms of the number of fly tips are up. The cost is up, definitely, because that's just about material costs. But the fly tips have gone up. I think there's one there which shows fly tipping reports. Again, if you look at it, you're talking about, say, 400, 450 to going to about 550 to 600. So there's certainly something happening there. And this data is helping us sort of better scrutinise that, in my opinion. So I think there's 2 things. One, on the back of that, one of the things that did help with some of this was the compactor days. People remember those compactor, they were really popular in all the wards, and where neighbourhood boards could put some funds forward, but it was matched, well, more than matched by the department, and that had a really positive impact. I would like to propose that we ask the council to reintroduce compactor days. That's a proposal I want to put. Yeah, yeah, okay. Second, that would that be something that members would agree that we should bring back? Because, as I say, it's an advantage to every ward, but it can also help. Because I remember there's a comparison done between Darley ward and Normanton ward. The compactor day collections, there were 18 tonnes collected from Normanton ward and 2 tonnes from Darley. So Darley did benefit relatively, but in terms of Normanton, for example, we had a massive clear out. So that would really be helpful. And I won't say anything this time, but it does again raise the question about whether online booking of the waste recycling centre is stopping more coming into there, and the consequent effect of whether it's collecting on the curbside or it's the number of fly tips, which I note is more proactive now, which is good, rather than waiting for people to report it. But there still is a cost to the council. Okay, I think sort of I'll leave it there. But that particular recommendation, I think, would be something would see what the response is from the council on that. Okay,
Thank you, Chair.
if there's no more questions, we'll move on to the next agenda item, and that is Derby Poverty Commission report with an appendix briefing paper. I think we have an officer to do that report.
That's me. So, yes, hopefully you've all received the report and the appendices. I don't intend reading through it. I'll probably bore you to tears with my dulcet tones. But just by way of a bit of background, particularly with the Poverty Commission, I think what's really crucial about the Poverty Commission, of course, is that this work stream's evolved over the last 2 years. So it's been during a time of a period of an emergency where clearly there's been the existing deprivation and the poverty experience in the city has been exacerbated by the pandemic. And so quite rightly, it focused people's attention, particularly those outside, within the community and the voluntary sector and within our city, to come together to have a more joined up approach. And you'll be familiar with other initiatives such as Food for Thought, the work streams around health inequality. And so actually what was missing was a framework that kind of pulled all of that together to ensure that we weren't duplicating, to make sure that everything that we was doing was in synergy. And as I say, this resulted in the concept for the Poverty Commission really coming to fruition, and they launched it in April last year. So within the appendices, it gives a bit more information around some of the background context. It is an independent Poverty Commission. We as the City Council are obviously crucial partners to that. Each political group's represented on the Poverty Commission, and then there's a number of different sectors and theme leads within the city. So it's a very, very diverse and dynamic group of people. And it's early days. We're not rushing this. It's, I say we, the royal we. We want to make sure that we get the model right. And what we've basically done is reach out to others nationally. We're also fortunate to have within our own group Peter Robinson, who's the Dean of the Cathedral, who's pioneered and led a huge amount of work around the poverty agenda in the North East. And we've also connected with a national network around the Poverty Truth Commission. And there's a bit more information in that about what the Poverty Truth Commission aims to address. Crucially though, on page 2 of the appendices is progress to date. So it's not a talking shop. There has been some time needed for those conversations to mature and us understand what the concept is and what it needs to look like. And this isn't about quick wins. This is about a long-term initiative that's going to, create those long-term outcomes. But there have already been some short-term achievements, and they're listed in there. So really, the report was at your request. So I'm here if you've got any questions that you'd like to ask.
Short but sweet. Any questions or comments from anybody? Councillor Atwell.
Thank you, Chair. How are we moving on with this, Carl? I mean, I know it took a little bit of time to get set up, but are things moving at a steady ship, and are we moving properly, progressing forward with it?
Yeah, and what I would say actually is, I think sometimes we need to step back and actually look at what has been achieved, and we've, within the space of 12 months, really taken it from concept to actual commission. We've just appointed, I say we, the royal we, the Poverty Commission has just appointed a full-time senior project coordinator, James Duffield, who actually is on a secondment. So we've been able to get that post funded and actually recruited to him. Because it was a secondment, we didn't have to wait and lose another couple of months. And already we've seen the 4 subgroups start to develop plans, and the Poverty Truth Commission will start to come online this year. So I think with so many different partners involved, sometimes you end up, things get delayed because there's not the agreement. I think we've got a really cohesive partnership that has enabled us to kind of cut through some of those early day noise and crack on. So for me, the progress is pretty rapid. We're working at pace because you can't really afford not to. You know, there's a real pressing issue affecting the city, and we need to be ready to be able to respond. So I'm really encouraged by the progress, and I know certainly the partnership's all going at the same pace. So we're not leaving anyone behind either.
Thank you for that, Carl. I mean, that's refreshing to know that it's moving at a good pace. And obviously, I know we've had a lot of setbacks as we've had this conversation before due to the situation we're in nationally and globally. But I think it's just a case of, like you said, letting it work its course, and hopefully we'll be in a much better position in 6 months' time to come back to another report of yours and see where we're at. But no, keep up the good work and well done. Thank you.
Cheers, thank you.
Okay, thank you. You know what I'm going to say on this. I mean, I think there's good progress being done with the Poverty Commission, although it is about other work that's happening and sort of capturing it and coordinating it and linking in. So most of the action so far is of that nature. The reality is we can have truth commissions and we can evidence the experience of people who are in poverty, but what matters is how do we get them out of poverty. And that is something we can do little bits by ourselves locally, but the reality is without funding, the structural poverty and inequality we know of will only get touched on the outer edges. So that's a challenge going ahead. So it's all well that progress has been made in setting up the Poverty Commission, but what about the big structural changes that will get in the way of any progress?
I think it's fair to say that when the partnership was forming their terms of reference, they were very clear that they wanted to give themselves a mandate to have that national voice as well, because this isn't just about what's happening locally. It is about having the ability and the mandate to be able to, make representations nationally. So that is within their it's within their gift to do that. I use the food for thought as an example, actually, of so what? What difference does it make? If we go back to the very start of the pandemic, we basically worked with our partners in the sector, and particularly the faith sector, to coordinate and put together an emergency food response model. And we did that by bringing together half a dozen food banks in the city, which prior to the pandemic had all operated in silos, done their own thing, got their head down and cracked on. We kind of pulled those all together to try and work as one system across the city so that it could be better coordinated. It was a lot easier for people in need to navigate, and that was them working through the community hub model. We commandeered St Altman's Church on Kedleston Road and transformed it into a warehouse. So we had one central storage and one central distribution in order to respond to the food emergency. Now, the emergency food response was quite clearly the right thing to do, and we should have always been doing it in a much more cohesive and coordinated way. So that gave rise to taking the emergency food response and actually forming Food for Thought as we know it today. Now, because it's a partnership, it's a consortium, it's a collective, actually where do we land that? How do we provide the governance, the independence for that as an entity in itself to move forward? And currently it works under the auspices of Community Action Derby. Long term, our ambition is to actually link that with the poverty so that it has, the proper framework in place, so that at the moment, you'll be familiar with the Food for Thought, that we're moving away from food banks into community shops. So that is a significant change in the city, and that's around pride and dignity, it's around choice. But also, what it enables us to do is move away from food banks being a handout and instead being a hand up. So it goes hand in hand with the advice, the advocacy, so that you stop treating the symptoms of poverty and start treating the root causes of it. And so what the Poverty Commission will enable us to do is take some of those existing work streams that are kind of formed as a result of the pandemic and bring them into one space to ensure that we are coordinating food, assisted food, together with debt advice, money advice, together with health inequalities, it brings them all in. And I think that will be the only way that we can have a genuine and authentic, coordinated, cohesive response to poverty.
Thank you. I mean, again, even the food for thought, it's better coordination, better facilities, but the fact is there are people who need that food in the first place. How do we get people not having to go to either community food shops or the people who volunteer and give food out? The underlying problem is, why are people in that situation? And that is something, that's where the structural work needs to be done. So, all well and good, better coordination, better joined up working, getting different food banks and food groups, coordinating it, but the underlying problem still exists. How do we actually get people not to be in that situation in the first place? And that's got to be a challenge. On that basis, I mean, we can note the progress and the work that's been done through the Poverty Commission. I also take note of you saying that they could potentially link up with Food for Thought, IAG, other bits of the organisation that you're talking about. So note that. But I think I would like to put for a recommendation that we also need the Poverty Commission to consider the bigger structural barriers that get in the way of people being in poverty in the first place. That's, and that needs to be looked at urgently by the Poverty Commission as soon as possible. That's the recommendation I'd like to put forward. Is that something seconded? Yeah? Would people agree with that? Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your report. And I think you've got another one coming up. Let's see what the next one is.
You'll be sick of me after this.
Next one is equalities and diversity better together.
So just bear with me 1 second. So again, this report, at the request of the Scrutiny Board, was for an overview, and I think the actual request was for an update on the Equality and Diversity Alliance. And I think you'll be very familiar that, within the city, we've developed a model around alliance working. It originally started, in fact, the original alliance in the city was technically the Stronger Communities Board, and then we developed the Youth Alliance, and then during the pandemic we've seen that model be fine-tuned to respond to things like Food for Thought. That's based on the alliance model. The Faith Forum is based on that. The one thing that we've not actually got at the moment, though, is an Equality and Diversity Alliance as such. What we've actually seen arise in the city, particularly over the last 2 years, is a number of individual new initiatives. So there's the new Derby Strategic Asian Partnership. We've seen the Muslim Burial Council. We've also seen the Faith Forum in its own right. So there's been a number of independent equality and diversity work streams that actually we felt was better to support those that were organically coming from the community rather than try and use an alliance model to create an equality and diversity alliance as it stands at the moment. Because of course within E&D you've got all the various different protected characteristics, and actually we're seeing greater value and greater outcomes from supporting those individual streams that are focusing around specific protected characteristics than trying to essentially create a framework for the sake of creating a framework. And again, similar to the Poverty Commission, these have been developed in a partnership space, so they're not council owned. They are very much coming from the sector, coming from our communities, and that kind of asset-based approach, which we are really kind of hoping to develop as the approach in the city. We've seen a number of different initiatives develop in response to specific themes, so the Muslim Burial Council, on a broader piece of work, for example, the Faith Forum, which was accelerated by the National Cross-Parliamentary Keeping the Faith report. So what we've done in this report is just to give you a bit of a flavour of some of those initiatives that have been developed in the city, aligned with the principles of Better Together, but those which are functioning within a partnership space. I could go on and on all night, don't worry. I won't, but what we've tried to do is give you a bit of a flavour of some of those to show you the dynamic, diverse models that have kind of evolved in the city. So we've started with the Race Equality Hub. Actually, that is an internal-facing framework. I'm looking at Ajay, I'm looking at Hardil, because Hardil's the current chair and Ajay was the previous chair. As you know, it's not always been a really kind of, it's been a challenging meeting at times. And I think, you know, what we've tried to do is bring more members into that, try and focus the agenda a little bit more. And I think we're seeing the fruits of our labour there, and we're seeing some progress being made. And certainly the Race Equality Hub, you know, around employment statistics. So there's that internal focus, but also we're really keen that that functions as well for our communities and a bit more of an external focus. So yes, there is things around the employment statistics and the census data, but we've also been able to really kind of grow the Race Equality Hub so that we can develop initiatives like Operation Black Vote, things like the Black Pound Day, and I'll come on to community talks in a moment, but also what we've seen is the membership grow. So the Filipino Community Association have really started to get more involved in the Race Equality Hub. You'll note last year, their first ever kind of public event to celebrate Independence Day, the Philippines. We are the only, the second city in the UK to raise the flag to mark that occasion. So, you know, for us, we've put the energy and resources into supporting the Filipino Community Association realise their own dreams, their own aims and aspirations. And we're certainly seeing the fruits of our labour for doing that. But the Race Equality Hub, nonetheless, remains a really important framework, and so we've listed that in there. The Community Talks programme, now that came from a seed of an idea from both within the community, but also some of the challenges that not just ourselves but our partners have been facing as well, other public sector partners. And so last year, back in July, we hosted the first of a concept, if you like, of community talks. Now you'll all probably be looking at me saying, we've done community talks event before, but generally they've had quite a prescribed agenda. We knew what we were going to be talking about. This model was different in the sense that what we basically did was create a platform and invite the key players, whether they be partners or community leaders or indeed just members of the community who've got something they want to say and want to be heard. And we held the first event over at the Museum of Making, where basically we just created a space with no agenda and we just decided to see where the conversation took. Now that's a pretty bold and brave, and I've been called a few other things for doing it, because how do you know how it's going to go? Well, the whole point is that we let the community discuss what it is important to them. And we did frame a couple of themes because, you know, that's what we want to hear from. So police, criminal justice system was one, politics was another one, business and employment was another one, and BLM, our colleagues at Black Lives Matter Derby, they also utilised that opportunity to have a dialogue with a different with a different cohort of the community to what they normally would. Now, the outcomes of this, you know, can be long-term, they can be short-term, but just to give you an idea, as a result of that event back in July, the Business and Employment one, working with the Small Business Federation and the Chamber, actually is what's given rise to the development of Black Pound Day. And there was an update just last Thursday at the Race Equality Hub around Black Pound Day and how we're looking to really introduce that and showcase that and in the city to support our Black and Asian businesses. So just from that one event, that was a catalyst for a piece of work. Equally, the political debate that was had back in July gave rise to us actually getting behind Operation Black Vote. And again, will we see the benefits of that during this, you know, will we see more Black and Asian and other ethnically diverse candidates in May this year? It might take a bit longer for that to kick in. We've got to build the confidence and, you know, change some of the system in order that we can see more Black, Asian and other ethnically diverse candidates. So, but already as a result of that event in July, that gave rise to Operation Black Vote. And of course, the health discussion has massively impacted the direction of travel of our Health Inequalities Partnership, which is actually listed in here separately. Now, our second roundtable talks was equally as dynamic. I like the word dynamic because it can mean several things. There was lots of difficult conversations. And I think that's important that those conversations are had. And we, at that event, had colleagues from the police, indeed the Chief Constable, Rachel Swan, opened the event for us. We invited the activists involved with the Safer Streets and Violence Against Women and Girls, you know, from Spectrum and from International Women's Day. We invited those community activists and colleagues to come in and have a conversation with officers and senior officers from the council and the public sector. Knife crime, stop search. As you all know, stop search has been a long-standing challenge and the impact that particularly stop search has on our black communities. And again, we were joined at this event by Stuart Lawrence, the late Stephen Lawrence's brother, and Stuart spoke very passionately about the legacy, the historical context of the impact of policing. So, you know, difficult conversations, but very much needed to be had. But what that shows is that we're really trying to adopt and foster a new approach to the way in which, you know, we support communities in the city around advancing their own agendas around equality and diversity. And again, we are posed now for the follow-up of that, which will be completed around Stephen Lawrence Day, end of April. And just because I can, I would like to thank Sam, because actually, you know, to do something like this, you've got to have some sponsors because you are putting your head above the parapet, and Sam's been fantastic in supporting us around the work that we've been doing with the community talk. So thanks, Dot. And there are a few others that are listed in there. The Health Inequality Partnership kind of speaks for itself. That's a really dynamic model. It's co-chaired. It's not led by public health. It's co-chaired by community members as well. And we've started to see, just in the last few weeks, the rolling out of community ambassadors who are going out and having the conversations themselves with communities around health inequalities, rather than it being public health professionals, you know, moving away from that paternalistic kind of approach and a much more kind of, you know, asset-based, community first. And again, I've mentioned the Faith Forum in the earlier conversation, but again, you know, a fantastic, stunning piece of work that's coming, led by the Multi-Faith Centre, but is really starting to bring together all the diverse faith groups in the city, and it's not just churches, it's faith-based organisations as well. And we've just jointly hosted a national webinar conference with the William Temple Foundation on the back of the fact that we've attracted the attention of the author of the Keeping the Faith report. So credit to the Multi-Faith Centre, credit to our faith leaders in the city, really coming together, and our role as a council really to support them in advancing their own agenda. So hopefully that gives you a flavour of the kind of work we're doing around equality and diversity within that partnership space.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Councillor Sandhu.
Thank you, Chair. Carl, I just want a clarification. You know, as you say, Derby South Asian Partnership. Can you clarify what you mean, Derby South Asian Partnership?
So that is it's the Derby Strategic Asian Partnership. That's not the, it's a typo in there. So DSAP is the Derby Strategic Asian Partnership.
So you say South here. So
I know, I've just seen that myself. You've caught me out.
all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's the South Asian community rather than Derby South. Yeah. Okay. Okay, well, thank you very much for that report. I was going to mention something about these stats, but I think we did get at the Race Equality Hub the statistics about different roles in the workforce and how representative they are of the communities in Derby. So that's there. I think in the future it would be helpful to bring the report, because it's there now, but I think it needs the census data for 2021, which still isn't available. to compare what the current diversity of Derby City is and how it's reflected or not in the workforce of Derby City Council as a start. But after that, I think, as you mentioned in your presentation, that we need to look at other organisations as well in going ahead. So you want to just come back on that?
Just a quick question. Can I just ask why the census data is not available from 21? The census data, why it's not available?
I think it's just a process. It's not been publicly available. It should have been by now. It's been delayed, but it's not available at the moment through the national picture. So as soon as that's available, we can compare the current situation against what the thing is. I have to say, looking at the statistics, it showed that Asian members of the community were less represented in the city council than in the local community. That's something got flagged up, and not so much the black representation. Black Afro-Caribbean representation was there or thereabouts in the city council workforce, but Asian, Pakistani and Indian in particular are less represented in the city council than in the local community. And it'll probably look even more stark when you get the 2021's data.
I was just going to say, if it's the employment stats, I'll speak to my colleague Anne Webster, and Anne's far better placed to present on that than I am.
Bring it here just to sort of get a picture in terms of on the issue about diversity. Okay, is that all right with everybody? Thank you for that. The next bit we've got is, what is it? Alistry Golf Course, I think next one. Yeah. Steve?
Good evening, Chair. Thank you. I'm just going to give a quick introduction, then hand over, if I may, to colleagues John Sadler and, if needed, Duncan as well on this report. Just on that point, if I may, Chair, I believe the census, colleague asked about the census. I looked at this fairly recently. I believe the national census for 2021 is being published by the ONS, Office of National Statistics, in April. I think they announced they delayed it slightly because of COVID delays. So I looked myself, funny enough, recently when the ONS census is being published, and it's shortly, the spring. Anyway, sorry, I digress. So, Chair, you asked for the scrutiny of the process in the closure of Alistry Golf Course and the events leading up to the sale or disposal by way of a long lease of Alistry Hall.
Just following what Steve said, obviously the report hopefully got in front of you. I'll just perhaps point out there's a lot of background information initially about the history behind it, how we got there. I think there are a couple of key points just to touch on. One was obviously the key thing was a cabinet report back in September 19, which set out the basis of the future of the Alistry Park golf course in respect to the sale of the hall and the golf course itself. In respect to the golf course, they suggested an expressive interest exercise and a consultation exercise.
You want to just bring it?
Sorry, it's obviously that's sensitive. That's better. I can hear myself now. That expressive interest exercise started in December 19, completed in March 20. Over that summer, the results were analysed, and in November of that year, the relevant delegated authority was signed off, resulting in that they noted the results of the consultation exercise. They noted that no viable business proposal to operate the golf course was submitted as part of the OI exercise, that the golf provision at the park to cease and the course be decommissioned and absorbed into the existing parkland, and that the course would be closed on the 31st of December 2020. I think it should be noted that following that thing, a further party came forward who was very experienced in running golf courses. I think that party operated 2 major golf courses in Nottinghamshire, and he had a background in dealing with various leisure operations. He subsequently was given permission to put a bid in. That was analysed, and in January of that year, that bid was turned down. It was decided not to proceed with that bid. Subsequently, work started to decommission the course and incorporate it in the parkland. Cabinet, at the request of full council, revisited this decision in 4th of August 2021, the conclusion of which was that on the balance of probability or evidence considered, there was not sufficient grounds to overturn the decision to close the golf course. The relevant minute for this cabinet is attached, as you can see, in Appendix 1 of this report. Taking the local Secretary of State one first, that was looked at, and the Secretary was satisfied that the land was being sufficiently used by Derby City Council for the purpose of public parkland, and therefore it was not decided to ask the Council to remarket the site. Thank you, Chair.
Questions? Comments? No? The only one I have is the decision to proceed. What was the process for that? I think you referred to it. Can you sort of identify? You mentioned it in the report where it is, and just the process of how the decision was made to proceed with closure of Alice Tree Golf Course.
Certainly, Chair. I think the main decision, as I made before, was the September 19 Cabinet report, which gave delegated authority to various officers and councils, portfolio holders, to make the decision regarding the outcome of the EOI and the consultation exercise.
The 19th of September?
It was in September 19, yeah, I can't remember the exact date.
19th of September?
But it was in September 2019.
2019, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
If you just bear with me, I put my glasses, I can read the actual date, sorry. It was 11th of September 2019.
Yes, okay, that's fine. And yeah, if you could get me a copy of that, that'd be really helpful after the meeting.
Certainly, I can send that to you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. John, on page 1 of 4.2, it says there estimate cost of repairing the building is 2.8 million. How many builders were approached for their quotation is 1, 2, 3, or just one?
2.8 million was stemmed back from initial work we did in preparation for the sale of the hall. We commissioned a firm of building surveyors to go around who were used to working with this type of listed building, and they produced the conservation deficit to that 2.8 million.
You sure it's going to cost 2.8? Because the example I can give you, the library, in Petrie Library, the council was saying it will cost 1.2, 1.5 million. And the Norman councillor and all the Arboretum, other council from Sinfam were fighting to keep the library. And we asked quite a few times, can we go back to the builders to find out, get more quotation? It can be done less than that. And nobody believed it. Now the owner, he spent money to repairing that building way, way lower than 1.2 million. Even it's less than $500,000. We are being told it's under 300,000. So that's why my question is, if it can be happen with the library, and it can be same thing with this building. It can be done in less than 2.8. I can guarantee.
You want to respond, Steve?
Chair, if you'd like me to just come in on that one. I mean, we've stated earlier to this board that we do not know what was spent on Pear Tree Library. We believe, from what we've seen, the costs that, if we had been commissioned, would be at least £500,000. But we don't have access to what they spent on that one. In terms of the 2.8 million, That was obviously provided by heritage experts at the time, because this is a listed building, and therefore everything would have to be signed off by conservation officers, and invariably going to be considerably more expensive than normal restoration. I don't know with respect how many colleagues or members have been in that building. I certainly have, and it's very much a skeleton, really. You can literally see ground to roof in certain places, and a lot of the structure is being internally supported with additional scaffolding. So this is very much a skeleton endangered building that is going to require extensive conservation expertise, unique skills, not your general builders with respect. And again, we don't know exactly what it will cost because it isn't been a tendered specification. But that John was obviously involved in that costing process, in the commissioning of cost consultants at the time, and that would have been their estimate. And probably with respect, even if it was £2.5 million, and I'm not saying it was, 3 years on, inflation will have probably added round about 20% to whatever the figure was at that time. So if it wasn't 2.8, and I'm not saying it wasn't, it probably well is now, because inflation is running at around about 20% on construction projects with materials and labour. I don't know if that might help at all, but I think there was sufficient belief in the rigour of the figure at the time. And personally, having inspected the building, I think you could easily spend 2.8 million on it, having inspected it personally just over 18 months ago. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can. Thank you for that, Steve. You can understand how there might be scepticism because Pear Tree Library is still sort of a difficult pill to swallow in terms of what it was estimated at to what it was actually, even the sort of figures at the moment, which in that time, and I understand it's before your time on the council, to have it continue to be used. That's what the figures were called for. Now, as far as I understand, it's being fully used. It's not a question of there's still more repairs that need to be done to make this safe and viable. There are businesses running from there now. So you can understand some of the scepticism. Steve?
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to say, just occurred to me, if members haven't seen the building, then subject to safety, obviously your safety is our concern, I'm sure we could arrange an inspection for those that haven't seen it. You would definitely need hard hat, gloves, goggles, and probably steel cap boots if you've got, but certainly some level of protection would be essential. But I'm sure if members were interested that haven't seen it, sorry to land you, John, because you know the building better, we would invite you to take up that offer. Just either contact myself or John Sadler directly, and we will very happily arrange said inspection if you wish to take that up.
Oh, there's an invite, Councillor Atwell.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that, Steve. I think it's a bit of deja vu. I think it's a sad loss that we've lost a massive landmark within our city of Derby, the Alice Street Golf Course. When I, from a personal level, spent many weekends there playing golf. It was a massive community structure. Okay, it's gone very well, and I'm all for that. No, there's no issues there because obviously it's all about going green. But I think it's a shame that we no longer have that facility that was well used, not just by the city of Derby, but from other towns in and around the East and West Midlands. So, and again, it's a sad day that we've lost a massive, structure in Derby that was once Derby was known for. I don't think we've got any golf centres left, courses left, apart from Symphony. But that was one of the oldest ones, and in my personal opinion, it was very, very well used. So a sad day, from my opinion. I
mean, I think we still don't know whether the current process of the purchases of Alice Street Golf Course, where we are, where we are in terms of progress on that. Are we sort of? Is it still moving forward, or is it not moving forward, or stationary?
Yeah, I think we just need to be clear. It's not the golf course we're selling, it is the Alice Street Hall and complex, which is totally different. Obviously, part of the golf provision was in the hall, but obviously they've moved out. The sale is progressing, it's taken time, it's disappointing we haven't got it through yet, but there's various complex issues we just need to work through. Trying to ensure that the sale to the purchaser and the purchaser is able to deliver a building that's sustainable for the future. Because I think we'll be criticised if we just sort of handed the keys over to somebody and they left it vacant for several years and didn't do anything to it, bring it into use.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's been decades trying to sort of do something with that Allestree Hall, with or without the complex of the golf course with it. And it's been a challenge for many administrations. So is there something that sort of a sort of projector timeline when it could be concluded, or is it open-ended? Because it's been quite a long time now since the decision was made and a preferred bidder or the organisation was engaged in contract discussions with ourselves.
Yes, it has. I agree that although the potential purchaser has invested in getting listed building consent and the necessary plans drawn up, that obviously costed money, he's put time and resources in there. We are wanting to try and get this done as soon as we possibly can, and hopefully in the next few weeks, but there's still some legal things we just need to sort through, and sometimes this takes slightly longer than you want to, so I'm a bit hesitant putting a date forward because we've done that a couple of times in the past and it's not happened. So, but certainly I'm sure that I can come back and inform the committee when it's been completed.
That would be helpful. I mean, just one last question. Is there any risk of that particular negotiation or process not completing?
There's always a risk until somebody puts their signature on the piece of paper. That's all I can say.
Any other questions, comments? Councillor Prosser?
I'd just like to add, I do think that it's likely to cost 3 million. It could cost more than that, could cost less than that, but it's a massive loss to the city that we've lost another heritage asset, and we need to look at ways moving forward that ensure that the council looks after its heritage assets better. This has been decades in the making. I'm aware of various people over 20 years ago who said various work was refused on cost grounds, and now here we are, the building's an empty shell, when it really should have been sorted. It could have been a fantastic venue for the city, a fantastic golf course, wedding venue run by the city or something similar, an amazing facility, and instead we've let it be destroyed and passed into private hands, and that's always a shame, and we should avoid that. We have other assets in the city and heading in the same direction right now, and that's just a big loss every time. Same with the library, you know, that was a big loss, and it's a repeated story. And I think as a council we need to look at how we can avoid these stories from happening, and how we can either improve the council's maintenance teams or understanding of how to actually maintain and look after its heritage assets. I mean, the Guildhall is the next one on the list. You know, where's that heading? What's happening? We need to ensure we don't lose these forever. Thank you.
I think just picking up on all those 3 points from Councillor Sandhu Atwal and Councillor Prosser, it is true that, you know, and I'm sure officers and administrators would say that because of financial constraints for local authorities, protecting and maintaining and not losing assets like Allestree Hall, Pear Tree, Carnegie Library building, that was. There's the Madeley Centre also which is being sold off, the Shaftesbury Sports Facility. They're all buildings which, because of the financial challenges of the City Council, we're losing slowly. And those are assets that, as you say, Councillor Prosser, need to be protected and defended. So I think there's something about, and what can we do as a local council to reverse this, because national funding is not forthcoming to make us build on what we got rather than lose it all over the place. So with that in mind, I mean, I'm suggesting we have a recommendation that we note that for whatever reasons we are losing assets within the City Council ownership for the people of Derby City, and we would encourage the Council Cabinet and the Council to look at ways of reversing this and access more funding to make sure that we don't continue to have to be forced into doing these sort of things, and rather than that, build our assets, build our heritage for the enjoyment of the people of Derby. Yeah. Okay. Second that, agreed. Anybody against that as an aspiration for us to work towards? No. Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you for the report, Steve. That is that, and I think the next agenda item is the work programme. Is it, Dominic? Oh, yeah, okay. You want to sort of share that, please?
Thank you, Chair. So there was a recommendation from the Executive Scrutiny Board that this board has an item on climate change. That was recommended to all of the scrutiny boards, so I think it's been planned that a presentation will take place to all councillors that are on scrutiny boards rather than the same report going to each committee. So.
There will be a report on climate change, but in terms of how it's, because all boards will need to do that, there'll be a date set for that, which may be... Sorry?
I think it'll be hybrid, yeah.
Yeah, it's a hybrid report. A date will be set, so we can cover that agenda item. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, that's for noting. And then the final one is the item 10, which is the work programme in 21-22.
So it's just to note, councillors, at the bottom of this where it says February/March date TBC for a potential extra meeting, due to constraints because of COVID, officers aren't going to be able to produce those reports. So instead, we're going to put forward that they're added to the work programme for next year's scrutiny board. But this board members will be invited to an extra meeting of the Regeneration and Housing Scrutiny Board. That will be in March, and that will give board members the opportunity to scrutinise the Moorways Sports Complex.
Great. I mean, I did try to get an additional scrutiny board of this one because there were a number of reports which were at the last minute not made available by officers, because of the challenges they've been facing through COVID. But they were clearly not able to even meet another date. So regrettably, we've sort of put those off into the next work programme rather than sort of have them in this financial year. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. And thank you for your attendance and your contribution.